Okay, so now I've got my topo surface created and my CAD file imported. I should mention that there was some extra stuff that showed up in my Revit file that had not shown up in my CAD file. And the reason for that is I had some frozen layers. So those were layers that were there, but invisible to me. And so, in that original survey, I can show you this little snowflake here, right? So I forgot about those. But when I turn those on, lots of stuff that I didn't need to see. So I deleted those items and then I updated my file here. So an issue that I'm running into here is that I can see my topo surface in 3D, but I can't see it here in my site plan. The issue is not that the topo surface is too low, but rather that it's too high for my site plan to show it. So what I need to do is I need to change the upper limit of my site plan visibility. So in Revit, when I import my contours, they show up at the actual elevation above sea level that they're at. And so in this case, it's in the mid 500s. And that's sort of, I don't know the actual best practice, but I can say that everything that I have read and heard is to leave those elevations there. And so you don't want to like adjust them down so your lowest contour is at 0. So I'm leaving them where they are, but it means that this thing is floating very high above the bottom of my Revit model. I have to imagine that if you're working at very high elevations, there has to be some accommodation to sort of set the lowest contour at 0 with sort of notes about the real lowest point on the site. But because we're not that high up, I'm going to leave my contours where they are. It'll make some annotation a lot easier later on, like when I want to set things like spot elevations. So, so the issue is that for a reasonable building project, most Revit building projects, you might set the visibility highest extent for the site plan in the like low hundreds of feet. It's anyway, the default for the site plan visibility range is it is 200 feet. So our topo surface is too high. And in fact, we might also miss some of the line work here. I'm not actually sure why the line work showing up in the topo surface isn't, but in any case, over in our properties, I need to click into my site plan view and not on any specific thing, but actually just click out in the view and I'm going to see the properties for the site plan itself. Right. And as I scroll up and down on the properties for the floor plan, I can see something that says view range and I'll click on edit. Right. So I can set the top to a level, or I can set it to unlimited. Right. I can do the same thing with the bottom. Right. Didn't like that, so I will set it to here. Right. Oh, maybe we need to set these both to unlimited. Okay. Right. So now that it's set to unlimited, we ought to be able to see our topo surface. We still don't. So I'll go back to our view range. Right. And I'm going to set it to this level, but I'm going to set the high point at about 600 feet. Right. And it's also important to set your cut plane. Right. Otherwise, the cut plane will cut things off below your view range. Right. So now I can see both of these. Just to check one last thing, I think I can set this to unlimited as long as the cut plane is high enough. So that's really all you need to worry about. All right, so now I can see anything I do on my topo surface over here in my site plan view as well. And you can see that I've now got a couple sets of contours. I've got my CAD contours, And then I've got these more jagged contours that the topo surface makes. That's not a big deal. Eventually we'll want to hide them. When we get into a little bit more about visibility, we can do that. You can see that some of the contours that were taken with like a backpack LiDAR actually kind of trace around retaining walls. And that's not ideal. We want to actually model those walls in Revit. So I want to go in and I want to edit my topo surface a little bit. So I click on it, and right away a context menu comes up, and I can go to Edit Surface. Right, so now I can really see like every little point and line on my topo surface, and I find this a little easier to do actually in plan view. So if I click on a point, right, if I select a point, I can see the elevation of that exact point. And I'll hit escape and select that one. So one option I have is to actually start to delete some points. Right? Like I don't want these points. Right? So I can click on delete. And what Revit does is I can also just hit delete. Right? What Revit would like to do, hang on, just escape out of there. Revit would actually like to adjust contours based on the points it has. And it doesn't do a very good job when contours are really close to each other, right? So if we take this point here, and I can also delete these points all at once. So you can see that it sort of redraws those contours. I kind of want to simplify this area out. So this is obviously something you can do in AutoCAD beforehand if you'd rather, or you can do it in Revit. Right? But what I really want to do is get a lot of those points out of there. I'm going to keep a few up here to kind of describe the change in elevation, but I'm going to regrade all of this anyway. So some of this messier stuff that tends to get picked up by surveying, it's a good idea to just draw a box around it and just hit delete. Okay. So now you can see that the Revit contours that are created from the topo surface are different from our CAD contours. In the end, I'm ultimately probably going to get get rid of my CAD file, but for now I'll keep it. But it is helpful to see that the difference that starts to happen when you start regrading your topo surface. One interesting thing is when it comes time to do any kind of grading, let me switch this back to solid. You can also edit your surface and add to it. It's not just something where you can eliminate points, but you can also add. So here, for example, I've got my 544 point, and we don't really edit contours in Revit. We edit points, right? There's a few ways to edit contours, but really you can start to regrade by moving points around, right? So if I wanted to do something like this, and notice it sort of tries to figure out what to do with the rest of this. I can place a point if I need one here. See, I was trying to grab a point to try to move this contour, and there's nothing to work with. So I can place a point, and I know that these are 1 foot intervals, and so this is 545. So when I go to place a point, right, I can type in its elevation and place that point right here. Maybe I'll even put another one over here, right? And then I can move those points around, and you can see over here the topo surface being modified as I work, right? So it tries to shift these contours around. You can see it being edited down here. Okay. I'll do something dramatic just to really show the difference. So maybe I'll do something at like 560. Right, so you can see what happens when I place that really tall point. So you can always delete that point, or I can go in and I can just change its elevation value. And it'll change the shape of my topo surface. So this is a lot of how you do your grading in Revit. It's actually with points. I know we're not quite there yet with the project. We're just getting started. But you can start to manipulate and modify your topo that way. So the next thing that we'll want to do is start to put in our walls and a few other site features. So I'll show you how to do that next.